Hey, well, good evening to you.
Well, thank you. Good morning, I guess.
Yeah, it's about 11 o'clock in the morning, Friday morning, and it's what time in Kabul?
7:30 in the evening.
7:30 in the evening. Yes, that's right. That's a funny, those half-hour changes.
Yeah, it's a little odd, but
Yeah, exactly. So, just first of all, what's happened since we spoke last week?
a busy week full of teaching, pretty much nonstop all day.
Uh-huh,
Um, Gotten to work with students individually,
uh-huh,
and then also did some coachings in groups. There's been some guitar ensemble pieces we've worked on.
uh-huh.
Um, and the Afghan Youth Orchestra, which of course did the tour in the United States. They're still rehearsing, still have performances coming up. So I did some coachings with the guitarists in the youth orchestra as well.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then we've also had a few performances recently. So on Wednesday evening, we gave a concert at ANIM, Afghanistan National Institute of Music.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that was a really fun program. We got to do uh, some collaborative pieces. We played with some of the students, some of the other faculty, and then we had a visit on Thursday afternoon to AFSICO, which is an orphanage that the school works very closely with.
Uh-huh.
And a good number of students from the orphanage are students at ANIM. And then we performed at the Canadian Embassy last night.
Ah.
So lots of performing going on as well as all the teaching.
Right. Well, sticking to the concerts, was this only guitar players or was it ensembles, different ensembles?
It was a mix of ensembles. I was actually none of the guitar students were involved in these concerts.
Uh-huh.
When I was here in the winter, one of the students did play a bit on some of the concerts. For this one, we had uh, I did some solo pieces. I also played duos with the two violinists who are here right now, Eden McAdam Sommer and Inyar Hannesdal from Boston and Norway, respectively,
Uh-huh.
um, which was really fun. We did some bar talk with Eden, Piazzolla with Inyar, and then the three of us together did some fiddle tunes. We did some Norwegian fiddle tunes, and then some Canadian fiddling as well, which was
Uh-huh.
sort of an homage to the Canadians at the embassy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we did a big group of us did an arrangement of a Romanian song, folk song.
Mm-hmm.
We also got to work briefly and did a quick recording session with an apparently very famous Pashto singer named Javid Amarkel. He had written a song about education, and so they worked with ANIM and arranged it for an ensemble. So we recorded that
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday, actually,
Uh-huh.
and performed it on Wednesday. Um, Javed Armakel had some sort of last minute conflict and had to pull out of the concert. So the choir, who sang in sort of a supplemental role, actually learned all of the solo singing parts and sang the whole song.
Ah.
Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and then we did a great collaboration with the Afghan players as well. So we got to play a raga with rubab and tabla and guitar and two violins.
Ah, interesting. Well, Pashta, where does that come from?
Well, Pashto is one of the ethnic groups in Afghanistan, and
Uh-huh.
actually, um, there are two official languages in Afghanistan. There's Dari, which is sort of the lingua franca, and it's the language of government and economy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Pashto, which is actually spoken by about as many people,
Mm-hmm.
um, though in Kabul, Dari predominates.
Ah,
Um,
uh-huh.
so he's ethnically and linguistically Pashto. Um, yeah, so the song was actually in Pashto, and some of the students didn't even really understand the words.
Ah,
Uh,
Interesting, interesting. And you mentioned, other faculty from different parts of the world. How international is the faculty at this point in time?
The well, including the guests here, we've got the four current guest faculty. We have three from the United States and one from Norway.
Uh-huh.
Um, at the school, the full-time faculty, there are two American teachers, and pretty much the rest are all Afghan.
Ah,
Uh,
uh-huh.
uh, in the past, there was a teacher from Mexico,
Hmm.
um, and there have been a lot of international guests that have come over the years.
Mm.
But right now, it's pretty much American and Afghan.
Ah, interesting, interesting. And you said you were coaching the guitarist in the youth orchestra. As you can imagine, that sounds a little different for someone we're not used to having guitars in orchestras on a regular basis. Is the orchestra, has it expanded in its instrumentation other than what we think of as a Western orchestra?
Definitely. I think since the orchestra has been in existence, it's been a mix. They wanted to combine Western instruments with the Afghan traditional instruments, and then at a certain point they said, "Well, why not? Piano. Like that's not that out of the ordinary to also add to the orchestra. And, well, we've got guitarists and we've got electric bass." So the orchestra became sort of this very bizarre instrumentation of whatever they are teaching at ANIM. So there are four classical guitarists in the orchestra, and then there's violin and viola and cello and bass and winds
Hmm.
and percussion, and then the Afghan instruments as well. So there's rubab, sitar, sarod, dilruba, tabla. Um, so it's turned into this very interesting mix.
Ah, interesting. And what specific pieces were you coaching for in the guitar
Uh,
sectionals?
we were doing a piece that William Harvey had composed,
Hmm.
who's the director of the orchestra,
Hmm.
called "Guide to the Afghan Orchestra," um,
Ah,
and so that's what we were working on. Some pretty tricky rhythms in there, actually. So we did a lot of very grueling rhythmic drills, actually,
uh-huh.
and had to sort of break all those things down into digestible parts
Hmm.
and then string them all together.
Ah,
So it was a rough rehearsal. I felt bad for them because I was being the bad guy a little bit, but they had some work to do. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then how many students do you have during this period, this guest period?
uh, I have, ooh, geez, I'm not even sure I have the count off the top of my head. I believe there are 16 guitar students,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
but so quite a lot. I I certainly don't see all of them every day.
Uh-huh.
I probably work with 6 to 8 students in a day, um, and sometimes I'll see the same student on three separate occasions.
Hmm.
Um, I know in one instance there was a student who had a lesson scheduled, and then they have practical time, which is just sort of their practice block.
Hmm.
Um, and then they had a class which got canceled, maybe. And so it was like we had a lesson, and then there was practical time, so we had another lesson. And then their class got canceled, and they didn't have anywhere to go, so we had another lesson.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and usually the lessons will involve other guitar students. So there is very often there will be at least two and maybe five students in the room at a time. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so hopefully some of the students are playing some duets together, and that's sort of the ideal for me is when I can work on an ensemble piece and we can sort of work together.
Hmm.
But if need be, I'll sort of spend 7 to 10 minutes with this student while the others sort of quietly practice, and then I'll jump over and
Uh-huh.
hop around. But
Yeah, yeah.
we've also done some group exercises. so I
Hmm.
can keep everyone engaged at once.
Oh, great. Wonderful. And then the concerts that you just did, were they were well received, I take it, and the audience, the number of people who attend these concerts?
Yeah, there were probably for the concert at the school and the concert at the embassy, probably a similar crowd of uh, I had to ballpark it maybe 40 to 50.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the performance space is not very large.
Uh-huh.
At the school right now, they're actually building a brand new recital hall, which will be its own building next to the main school building.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the performance space now is the orchestra room.
Uh-huh.
So it's not a perfect performance space, but it's definitely uh, absolutely functional,
Mm-hmm.
and squeeze as many people in there as we can.
Yes.
Um, and at the embassy, actually, the embassy was a very idyllic setting. We were up on the rooftop.
Uh,
We had a wine and cheese evening, which is the only way you can have alcohol in Afghanistan is if you're actually in another country, meaning the embassies.
uh-huh.
Um, uh, and uh, and it was we had our sort of dress rehearsal sound check just as the sun was setting over the mountains. It was sort of perfect evening.
Uh,
So that was really nice. And then Thursday afternoon we played. I think I mentioned at Upseco at this orphanage,
uh-huh.
which was probably my favorite couple of hours of the entire trip. Um, and the kids there are just some of the best kids you could possibly imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And not only did our performance go over great and they loved it, but then they had prepared a dance routine for us. Uh,
Uh-huh.
so all went into the audience and they went up on the stage and it was just beautiful. So
Oh, wow. Amazing. And how many kids are in the orphanage? Can you tell?
I think there are about 80 in this orphanage.
Uh-huh.
I don't think all of them were down in the performance space
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, but I think it's something like 80 or 90.
Uh-huh. Yes, interesting. And then what's on store for this coming week?
Today was our day off, so we got to go out to lunch and did a little bit of shopping for some souvenirs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and tomorrow's back to a full day of school.
Mm.
And will pretty much be that until I leave. The only sort of extracurriculars I have, we're going to be attending a concert of female music students through the Aga Khan Music Initiative, which I've just sort of found out about.
Uh-huh.
And the Aga Khan is a major leader in the Muslim world, and apparently is sort of the equivalent of a king,
Uh-huh.
and is very, very philanthropic and has rebuilt a lot of historic buildings in the Muslim world. And there's a music institute that they support in Kabul.
Uh-huh.
And so we'll be going to a concert that they're presenting just as guests.
Uh-huh.
I'm lobbying really hard to try and get the rhubarb teacher to take us to a rhubarb maker's shop. So
Uh-huh.
fingers
Yes.
crossed. That'll pan
Yes,
out.
exactly. Well, thank you so much, and I'll have to follow up on this when we talk the end of next week. And thanks for taking the time and filling us in. Sounds like you're having a good time. So,
So, thank you, Mike.
yeah. So we'll talk to you next week.
Great. Sounds good.
Uh-huh.